Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn this over to your host, Chief Customer Officer of Vengreso, Priya Sachdev. Priya, take it away.
Hey guys. Yes, happy Diwali. I see some Diwali greetings coming here for me. Back to you guys. Excited to be here today, ready to catch the big fish and to talk about the cadence that we need to have for our inbound and outbound. Talk about what channels get us the best response while you're prospecting. I think one thing that we're all excited about. And also talk about sales technologies and sales messaging. And who better to do it with us than Mario Martinez Jr. himself. So Mario, are you ready to share the secret sauce with us today?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. And so before we get started, we're going to tee up a little video for you and then jump right into the topic for the day. And that's who Vengreso is. Yeah, sales, something that we are really passionate about, and hoping that all of you who are joining us today are equally passionate about it. So let's get started and jump right into it. Mario, often we discuss this, right? While prospecting, the biggest fear we have is people say no. And I've heard you talk about this where you say, no now doesn't mean no forever or never. So tell us a little more about your view on that point.
Priya, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with all of you guys today. Hey, great to see so many folks from all over the world actually that are joining in with us, sales leaders and sales reps. Now, Priya, I just want to say, I've been struggling with this cough for the last month. And so I'm going to try not to cough in your guys' ear, but if I do, please forgive me. It's not intentional. But as we know, prospecting is the toughest thing right now to do for a seller. In fact, Priya, we'll be sharing some of this data and some of the articles for all of you sales leaders out there right now that are listening in. Something that I want you to consider. Back in 2020, we've done 4 research polls now. And in 2020, around the June 2020 timeframe, right in the middle of the pandemic, we asked sellers around the world, what was the hardest part about selling? And we've got hundreds of responses. And at that time, 58% said the hardest part of selling was getting the first conversation. We had a couple other options on there in terms of what sellers were asked. As an example, sellers were asked whether it was getting the first conversation, qualifying the opportunity, presenting a solution, or closing a deal. And at that time, 58% said that was the hardest part, was getting the first conversation. We did this study again in September of 2020, Priya, and that at that time, 71% of sellers around the globe said getting the first conversation was the hardest part about selling. In April of 2021, we had over 800 respondents, and at that time, 68.5% said the hardest part of the sales cycle is getting the first conversation. And hot off the presses, Priya, is it okay if I release our new research that hasn't been published yet?
Absolutely. I'm sure. I'm excited to know what that data point is.
All right. All of you guys are getting it for the first time. Nobody else knows about this because we haven't published it yet. October 2021, nearly 1,295 B2B professional sellers surveyed around the globe and asked, what is the hardest part of the sales cycle? Same four options: getting the first conversation, qualifying the opportunity, presenting a solution, closing the deal. And at this time, 69% say that getting the first conversation is the hardest. Jeez,
I can vouch for it. I can vouch for that one.
Absolutely. And so what we're dealing with right now is what I would call a sales pandemic. And not to be taken lightly against the real pandemic that's happening, but this is a big problem and it's global. And most sales folks are not successful at prospecting because they don't follow it through. So going back full circle to your question, how do we catch that fish? The big fish. What's the right sales cadence that we're going to implement? What's the formula for inbound, outbound? What channels should we use to prospect? What are the technologies we should use? And what's the messaging? And Priya, that's what we're going to talk about today. So success comes with not stopping, and we've got to be committed to the process.
Yeah. Committed to the process, right? And then we say the process takes time, and time means patience. But then as salespeople, we've got a quota to run after, right? So the clock is ticking. And I know that being a sales leader, I've spent nights thinking about this to say, how do I balance this, the quantity and the quality? Because you need to keep chugging this along, right? I'm answerable for a quota every month, every quarter. How do you balance this? Any tips on that one?
So that's a really great question. Let's talk a little bit about an inbound sales cadence versus an outbound sales cadence. And let's talk about the need for hyper personalization when it comes to our prospecting. Now, I'm going to talk about what we have done in terms of a best practice here at Vengreso. I will also share with all of you sales leaders that are out there what we consult with other organizations on and the tips that we give them to be able to help improve their results. Okay. So without a doubt, the first thing that we need to be thinking about when it comes to balancing length, quantity, and quality is we need to ensure, number one, that we're using the right channels. Now, I cannot give you a blanket swath statement that says you must use these 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever number of channels. But what I can say, and what, by the way, the reason why I can't do that is because I don't know where your buyer lives. I'm not sure exactly what your buyer type or persona is. But let's just make an assumption that everybody who's on here is B2B sales, yeah? B2B sales. And with that in mind, where do our buyers live and how do they like to communicate? We first need to establish the channels. Most reps today are doing phone and email. Whether you're a BDR, SDR, account executive, whatever it might be, phone and email. Now, some of us are starting to dabble back into events where we're actually going live and seeing customers at events. That's starting to come back to life. But for the most part, what we're going to see is in terms of going back to normal is that we'll never go back to where it was. We'll be in a completely hybrid world from here on out. Okay. So we have to, as sales leaders, plan to be able to live in that hybrid world. Now, let's think about the quality versus quantity. In many cases, we've got SDRs and BDRs pounding the phones, 60 dials a day, or maybe they're using an auto dialer and they're trying to get to a hold of 60 people. Some sales leaders are listening and they say, well, my reps also use LinkedIn. Probably so. And my guess is just like email, they're doing LinkedIn wrong too. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate side. So let's talk about first the Omni Channel. If you're preparing to drive a prospecting program that is going to get results, you need to be thinking about how to leverage all your channels. First, we need to have phone enabled. Second, we need to have email enabled. Third, we need to incorporate social media, LinkedIn, and doing it right. Fourth, We need to incorporate video. Video is critical. Video is critical to be able to engage with today's modern buyer. Text messaging. Now, those 5 I just mentioned are kind of the table stakes. These are the things that you should be doing right now. So if you're thinking about your prospecting program, before you think about quantity or quality, you need to think of mediums. And if your infrastructure doesn't support your reps being able to do all 5 of those things and have the skill to be able to deliver a video that is less than 60 seconds that attracts your target buyer, to have the skill of being able to learn how to engage, find and engage a buyer and convert them into a connection and then convert them into a actual conversation. Also, the messaging framework for email, right? Going back to email, how do you construct your messages so that they actually solicit a buyer response? How long should your subject lines be, as an example? How long should that email be? What 3 parts should you have inside that? These are the things you want to be thinking about. Because if you do these things right, then quantity and quality can coexist together, in my opinion. You do them wrong, now you're focusing in on quantity on one of these channels, and you're going to basically shoot yourself in the foot. So hopefully that covers the what I call the Omni Channel, and the balance of quantity and quality comes with being laser focused on a particular perspective. Let me tell you what we do. What we do at Vengreso is we target every single month our what we call market development managers, which are basically business development representatives, but they're in training to take on that account executive role. Okay, we're teaching them a little bit of strategy. We're teaching them how to engage. We're making sure we're honing in those skills because their next stop is here. So you've got your BDR, MDM, and then you've got an account executive. That's a whole separate conversation. Email me and I'll talk to you more about that if you want to know more. But that having been said, our MDMs are focused on 30 outbound targeted accounts per month. Now we go after 3 buyer personas in every single account. So that's at least 90 different points of contacts. Okay, now you're saying 30, that's it? It's very account-based focused. Yes. And we also take in the inbound. So anything that comes in on the inbound. In either case, inbound or outbound, we run a cadence of outreach for the inbound and a cadence for outreach on the outbound. Did I say inbound? You get my point. One of them's inbound, one of them's outbound. We run a cadence on that. And I could talk a little bit about the cadence in a minute if you want me to. So does that kind of tee up the answer to your question that you're looking for in quality versus quantity?
Absolutely. And I think you absolutely made the point there. I can talk out of experience, right? How many messages do you get on LinkedIn, which are like cold messages? And sometimes I get a message like I got one today which said, "Hey, first name." I'm like, really?
Yeah.
He started it all. It said the right stuff. It said Diwali greetings. This should be a week with family, but it started with, "Hey, first name." And I'm like, dude, this is just not cutting it for me. And I think that's what I was thinking about when I was saying somebody got the quantity in, right? But just didn't think about quality. And I think the biggest pet peeve or the touchy topic that you hear me talk about all the while is that how do we humanize this conversation, that human to human connect, so that it's not just a bot sitting there and sending out messages in the name of prospecting.
Yeah.
I get, and I'm sure you get, loads of those messages still, where every time you get them, you're like, oh, who is this person? Why are they doing this to me? Or to anybody for that matter.
Yeah, actually, so it's a good point. So I actually track, because we teach sales prospecting skills training, digital sales prospecting. So I actually have a folder that says email in my Gmail. I have a folder that says emails that suck and emails that don't suck.
Wow.
And the last time I checked, which was, I think I was keynoting an event about a month ago, and I had, in the last year alone, I had about 300 emails that suck, and I had about 10 of emails that don't suck.
Wow.
And these are the types of things, to your point. Hey, first name. That's an easy one. But also when we think about, as an example, we pull in company names, and this is something I want sales leaders thinking about right now. Right, sales leaders need to be thinking about this very specifically. If you don't have someone that's doing data enrichment on the data before your sellers get it, you better make sure that your BDRs and SDRs and account executives are doing the enrichment before they hit go on that Cadence or the sales tool or even hand-to-hand combat, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, anybody who brings in the name Vengreso, they're usually pulling it off of our company LinkedIn page. And we have a slogan attached to our Vengreso company name. And it says Vengreso, space, prospect better, sell more. So every single time I get an email or a LinkedIn message, I know exactly when the automation is when it comes time to looking at the message, because it says Vengreso. I see that you're with Vengreso, prospect better, sell more. What also customers are doing, and I have one of our largest customers is a technology organization. We have working on a deployment with over 2,500 sellers to help train them in digital sales prospecting. Okay. And the CSO of this organization has in his name first name on LinkedIn. So if anybody's using a tool like ZoomInfo or Seamless.ai or scraping information off of LinkedIn, it's going to scrape first name. And every time that they get that email, they know exactly that it was automated. And this is that quality and quantity. We have to go back to using our brains if we want our prospecting to be successful. So sales leaders, if you're taking a note, go back to marketing and say, who does data enrichment? And then they're going to say, oh, we have a tool that we use Never Bounce. We use this. No. Who is the human that you have that we are outsourcing, looking at the first name, looking at the last name, looking at the company name, so that when we're bringing in these tokens into our SalesLoft, our Outreach, our VanillaSoft, whatever tool you're going to use, when you're bringing that in, that it doesn't say first name. And you turn your buyer away. And that's going back to what you just said, which is that human to human engagement. So if you're going to enter into a Cadence and you're going to reach out, you've got to understand those details first. And for those of you that are doing hand-to-hand combat, which is majority of sales reps, right? Hand-to-hand combat, meaning you're prospecting, you're sending out messages. You need to look and make sure before you hit go on that message that you've got the right name and the right company name. That is one clear way to be able to lose your buyer on that first click into your message.
Absolutely. So agree. So Mario, you mentioned, and I know in our team, we are actively using a lot of video. And I want to understand from you, what would you suggest to people who are listening in today about video messaging? But before we do that, and we go there, we want to play in a quick short video, and after that, looking for the answer on that question. And
I got it.
Wow. And that's fly message. So for all of you listening in, you should go and download that on the Chrome extension, because it really does do what we just showed you in the ad, right? Actually, you can get few minutes or hours back in your day, because you're not going to be copying, pasting your messages anymore. And Mario just put the link of that in the chat as well. Great. So Mario, back to the question that I had. What's your view on video messaging? And should we be aggressively using it? Should it fit in somewhere in the Cadence? I know a lot of people use it only for follow-up of conversations. What's your take?
Really great question. So the answer is 100%. You heard me say earlier about the Omni Channel, right? The 5 components that we utilize at a minimum. And that's not everything. So there are many other avenues, including direct mail as an example, which is making a great comeback, as well as gift marketing. But video message, 100%. If you're not using video messaging today, you are missing a major element of how to engage with your buyer. Let's talk about that. So a couple of things. Number one, when we think about leveraging more than 2 channels for sales prospecting, so let's just say phone and email, statistics show and data shows that you get about a 10% buyer engagement rate. And that's out of million worth of points of data that was studied by, in this case, Zant, in terms of published this particular study. And with that data, it identified that individuals who use just 2 channels got 10% buyer engagement. But add on a third, add on a fourth, and what you got was a 400% increase in buyer level engagement, right? Using video as an example and or social. So a third and a fourth medium. So you've got to go and figure out, sales leaders right now, you've got to figure out how to train your sellers with these types of tools, because a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that's one of the things that we really focus in on, is that digital sales prospecting is going a mile deep into things like video, into things like LinkedIn and sales messaging framework. Now, in answer to your question, we've got 2 different types of cadences that we run. Cadence number 1 is on inbound. Cadence number 2 is on outbound. Now, these cadences were designed and developed based upon research that came from some really great, amazing companies, including Outreach, SalesLoft, and others that are out there. We utilize all their data and we put together the best of the best, taking in all the data from these particular practices. And we developed a sales cadence for the inbound. Now, the inbound basically means someone's a hand raiser. I raised my hand, or marketing's doing their job, and this person is perusing the web, your website, and in this case, our website, is clicking on emails, is maybe downloading a form, or things that are the top of the funnel type of stuff. And eventually we get to the point where they become a sales qualified lead, that there's enough interest that's been expressed that we think we should engage with those individuals. Our cadence looks like an 18-step process over the course of 40 days. I'll repeat that, 18 steps over the course of 40 days. On day number 1, when this lead sales qualifies, we do 3 things. We connect on LinkedIn, call, and email. Now, this is very important that you understand this. Why do we say we connect on LinkedIn, then call, then email? And all 3 of those steps, we're connecting on LinkedIn because we want to get that person in our network. This is our buyer persona. And if we're doing our jobs right as sales leaders, we're teaching our sellers how to feed their network with valuable content. Mm-hmm. Now, if there's nobody in your rep's network that are interested in buying, then you're having them do something that is going to produce no results. So build your network up. That's very important. Build the network. And remember this, sales leaders, rewind back 25 years ago when I started selling in B2B sales. I just hit my 25th year, 96 consecutive quarters in B2B sales. I feel like I'm really old. With that in mind, I just hit that. And with that in mind, when I used to prospect, I had a big old giant Rolodex ball. You know, that big turning ball you had on your desk that you thumb through or finger through the A through Z index? How many of you remember the big Rolodex? Throw it in the chat if you remember. Just give me an amen if you remember the Rolodex ball. And with that in mind, for those of you that had it, so some of you are saying, yep, got it, got an amen. So for those of you that had it, We don't have a Rolodex ball on our desk anymore. There isn't one. Where's that Rolodex at? It's a digital Rolodex, and it's something called LinkedIn. So learn how to use it right. And that's some of the training programs that we have as well. So we start with connect on LinkedIn, bring them into our network. Then we call and say, hey, John, I was reaching out. I saw that there was some interest in, and you've now made an assessment looking at your CRM, your marketing automation, whatever it is that you give sellers access to. You've now made that assessment and said, what are all the things that they have done? And where might this point to in terms of a product market fit? That's uber important. And I remember something that you said just not too long ago, Priya, in our own sales meeting to our sellers. And you said, if I wanted a bot to be able to just send out messages without consideration to what it is that the person did, then I would just have a bot. I would have a tool like Conversica as an example, right? And just start pumping out messages, an AI bot, without regard to what they did. But the reason why we have people, Absolutely. Your sellers, is so that they can look at the data and analyze, what do I do next? What will be of value? So that when you make that phone call, you're personalizing that call, you're bringing value to that call, and you're giving them a call to action to call you back and letting them know that you connected with them on LinkedIn, and you'll be sending them an email. And that's the step number 3, is send them the email. And in that email, we want to be constructing our messages using the PVC sales method. Now, our Vengreso webinar host is going to give you the website pvcsalesmethod.com in the chat. It's another great article, and it's the entire messaging framework that we teach in our training program. And in that article as well, you'll be able to watch a training video that we have directly from one of our trainings. What is this PVC sales method? Very simple. PVC, like piping? Yeah. Personalization. Bring value, have the right call to action. And we give you an actual cold messaging template that you can use. And oh, by the way, that commercial that you just saw for Fly Message, we have 22 free sales templates that are embedded inside there. Our premium edition is about to launch in the next 30 days, where you'll get access to all 70 of our scripts for a nominal fee on a monthly basis. So go use Fly Message. It's phenomenal. We've got thousands upon thousands of sellers that are using it all over the world. And they're finding some great use cases so that they don't have to store their messages in Google Docs, OneNote, Evernote, Notepad, a draft email. So I encourage you to download Fly Message. So our webinar host will put into the chat pvcsalesmethod.com. Please make sure you do that, Felipe. With that in mind, video, back to your question and where this belongs. Video actually doesn't take place on the inbound until the 7th step. So on step number 4, which is the next day, we're going to do some social engagement if they haven't called us back. It's that reminder to get that back into their box and get up and running on the notifications on LinkedIn, as an example. On day number 2, we're going to follow on LinkedIn and save as a lead in Sales Navigator. Now, most of you say, wow, that's interesting. Why would you follow on LinkedIn and save as a lead in Sales Navigator? Okay, little secret tip here for you and your sellers. Follow on LinkedIn actually sends a notification, if notifications are turned on, which most have, that someone has followed them. And wouldn't you like to get into someone's email box? Yes. And what better way than to get into someone's email box than using an @linkedin.com email address, which is guaranteed to get delivered from a spam perspective, that Mario Martinez has followed you, and get a notification that Mario Martinez has followed you, right? So that's the reason for following on LinkedIn and saving in Sales Navigator. So that's a twofer right there. Then on day 3, we call again. And on day 5, now we do a video email. Now, all of this is stored inside of a really great article that is our prospecting article. So if you don't remember this, it's no problem. It's being thrown to the chat right now. And that is our blog, What is Prospecting? And don't worry if you forget all of these things. When we actually send out the message, our webinar host is recording all the links that we're putting into the chat. So if you're watching this on replay, we'll make sure that you get all these links along with the replay of the video as well. So with that in mind, that prospecting article I gave you shows the cadence that we're using. And then, Priya, to answer your question on the outbound side, we're also using video email on step number 5, which happens a couple of days after we've engaged with that particular buyer, step number 5. So video message is insanely important. And in a virtual or hybrid world, we need to build trust. And that is through the use of that smile. And that is the use of that face. And oh, by the way, we hear everybody say, I'm scared. I don't like video. I feel uncomfortable. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I have a zit. I have a receding hairline, by the way. Mine's about, 6 inches back now from my eyebrow. I'm losing my hair. Don't worry. I'm losing mine as well. All kinds of excuses. Okay. Sales leaders, you're going to hear it. So how do you get through it? Simple as this. Ask your seller, listen, do what you're supposed to do. Yeah. Got it. Let me ask you a question. If I ask you to attend an event, will you please attend an event? Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. What event?
Yeah.
Hypothetical. You walk into the event. Are you going to have a bag over your head? Well, no, of course not. No, because the way you feel about yourself, if you think that you're losing your hair, you've got a big head, you're fat, you're ugly, you got this, whatever problems you think you have, you still have it in person as you do virtually. So let's get that out of the way. It's not something we need to worry about. And you got to play that psychologist role there, right? And by the way, we actually talk about that in our training. Trust me, in our video sales training program, we get a lot of that, trying to just talk people through how they feel uncomfortable inside that particular segment there. All right. That was a long question. Long answer. Sorry.
Yeah. No, but I think that's the point here, right? And I can just go back and think about, when we started selling, we were actually in the field trying to speak to people, negotiate our way, because there was no internet. So I'm older than you are from that perspective, have done 30 years. And I remember walking into offices, literally getting thrown out. And when we were asked to send emails, we were uncomfortable because we didn't know how to write emails, right? But now emails has become like second nature. And today we feel uncomfortable with video. So I think in the next couple of months, we'll have the same comfort for video as well. Also, there's been a question here as well. And this was something that I was thinking. You earlier spoke about calling people. Have we ever done any research, or do you have a viewpoint on saying, do people answer phone calls? Because now with the pandemic, you actually can't call people in office, right? And so the calls that go through are on mobile phones, and a lot of them land up in voicemail then.
Yeah, that is a major problem that has been present before pandemic and is still present today. In fact, the data shows that roughly out of 100 calls, you'll reach less than 10%.
Yeah.
So that was pre-pandemic, right? And it's even worse now. Even on email, think about this, right? On email, between February of 2020 and February of 2021, email volume increased by 40 billion more emails around the globe. 40 billion more emails, right? So this is a problem, and that is why sales prospecting is the hardest thing. And I think it was Marcella that asked that question. Thank you for asking that question. So that is why we say, you heard me say earlier, if you're building a prospecting cadence, you've got to be committed to the long-term program. And even if you don't have a sales loft or an outreach, as an example, you want to use Fly Message. Right? Fly Message is a phenomenal tool that you can store all of your messages in, and you can do quick text and place them anywhere on the web. And you need to use phone because it's going to take anywhere between 8 to 13 touches. 8 to 13 touches to get a response. Now, that's a big range. And the data shows it's 8 or 13 or 12 or 10 or 11 on average, right? And everybody's got different studies and everybody's got different information. That is why you need about a 17-step or 18-step cadence, at least over the course of 30 to 35 days. That is the best practice behind a sales cadence. You cannot stop at step number 3, 2, 4, 5, 6. 7. You cannot stop. And as painful as it is, not getting a response, not getting information, not getting engagement back, as painful it is, let me assure you that on step number 17, you still get a response.
Oh, yeah.
Even our sellers today are walking all the way through this and saying, oh, and then all of a sudden, step number 17 or 18, man, you've been so persistent. Or another great one, someone wrote back to one of our reps recently, Hans, and said, you know, your company is so lucky to have you. You've been so diligent about the follow-up process. The way that you're actually going through this process is amazing. I really love your cadence. I'm not interested. I don't have a problem. I don't need to increase my sales pipeline, nor do I need to increase my sales meetings. Okay, you're not a buyer for us, but at least we got the response and they understood the diligence behind the process and how personalized the messages were. And some of you are asking for templates. So yes, there are some great templates in flymessage.io. Download that. That's number one. And number two, for some of the other templates that you're looking for, we've got on the pvcsalesmethod.com, that address that you saw there. That one actually will lead you to some additional templates that we've got. And then we have a great article, which hopefully our Vengreso webinar host can find right quick in the next 5 minutes and put it on the chat. And that is some LinkedIn messaging templates as well that you can use. But with flymessage.io, it'll allow you to, inside of LinkedIn to use your shortcuts to be able to build your messages that you've created as well. And then on voicemail scripts, some of you asked about voicemail scripts. I'm actually getting ready to do another cold calling podcast on the Modern Selling Podcast. And if our Vengreso webinar host can put in the link to the Modern Selling Podcast off our webpage, that'd be great. The Modern Selling Podcast, we've got some great content around cold calling. I'm getting ready to do another one that's going to be published, I think, maybe mid-December, if I'm not mistaken. But there is another one on cold calling and some tips that if you email us at info@vengreso.com, then we'll make sure we get you that particular article. It's a podcast that you'll want to listen to that I think will be super helpful. And so our Vengreso webinar host, if you can copy the full link so it's hyperlinkable inside the chat, not just a dead link, please. I see you popping that inside there. All right, so that answered that question. Priya,
Yeah.
what other things you got for me?
And I have a question, and I can see some questions coming into the Q&A as well. So I'll start with mine, and then we'll go there. So Mario, some of the points that you made, do you think these are applicable for small businesses as well, or are these more for enterprise businesses? Because I see we've got a mixed bag of people here.
That's a really great question, Priya. And the answer to that question is, hey, we're a small business. We're a 5-person sales organization at Vengreso. So let me start with, yeah, everything I'm telling you is what we do at the small level and at the largest of large. The question is, are you committed to the process? And you don't have to have an SDR to do this. You don't have to have a BDR to do this. For the most part, most of us, and when I was growing up in sales, I never had a BDR and SDR working for me. I had to do it myself. And most of us are full sales cycle, quota carrying, and prospecting agents. You have to be committed to prospecting, and you cannot stop. That is very important that you understand that. But if you have a phone, if you have email, if you have LinkedIn, you can download free tools from Hippo Video as an example for doing video. From OneMob and even Loom, although I don't recommend Loom for B2B. It's more like a quick video, that's it. But OneMob and Hippo Video would be some great tools there. And if you've got those, that means you also have text messaging as well because you have a phone. So you need to be able to work and build out a cadence. Now, one of the things I want to say to all the sales leaders listening in is this takes time. That article on what is prospecting that we included in there in the chat, which will drop in one more time on the what is prospecting, please, Vengreso webinar hosts, if you could drop that in. I want you to look at that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go try to build that. Now, if you think you need help, I am happy to spend with you. If you're a company that has 15 sellers or more, get your CRO on the phone. I will spend 30 minutes and give you some free consulting that helps you walk through this process very easily to be able to take you through it and how to build this out. For example, we're on HubSpot, and HubSpot, as an example, allows us to be able to build out all of our tasks as associated with our cadence. And so the way it works is actually when we start an inbound cadence or an outbound cadence, we have a little property and drop down. It triggers a workflow, Priya, as you know, and the first 3 tasks are created. Call, email, connect on LinkedIn, or connect on LinkedIn, call, email. Yeah. Once we've completed that, then the workflow builds the next task, and then the next one all the way to task number 17 or 18 on the inbound versus the outbound. So this is not hard. And here at Vengreso, we do hand-to-hand combat. I mentioned to you earlier, work as a sales leadership team to say with marketing, who are the companies that have intent? That's the first thing you want to think of. The next thing you want to think of is what are the companies that are in our database that are our target market that actually have marketing qualified but not sales qualified. Those are the ones that we want to kind of get in front of and see if we can get them sales qualified with the right target buyer persona. The third thing, here's your free tip right here, taken straight from our training. If you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, there's a filter called Spotlight. Go to the Spotlight, drop down all companies, or excuse me, contacts that are following your company, and then filter them and have your reps look at who are those people that are following our company that are not customers. Hello, they're following you for a reason. Engage with them. And then the fourth step in terms of developing your account-based marketing list is really going in and looking at, and that fourth option is going cold. Who is the target company, target industry, target persona, etc. And you add that to your list, and there you go. You've got 30 accounts. Now, there's one more cool thing that we have, and it is we've built millions of dollars in sales pipeline and closed one by using this technique. You ready for it? I'm going to see if people are ready for it. If they're awake in the chat. Are you awake in the chat? Are you ready for it? Give me a yes or a no. We got C, yes, ready. Okay. If you are a rep listening in, you want to march over to your sales leader's office or your CMO. If you are a sales leader, you want to march over to your CMO's office and say, I want to start a podcast. We call this ABP, account-based podcasting. And it's a brilliant way to be able to get great content out into the marketplace. But at the same time, you're targeting your target buyers to invite them to share their thought leadership, which allows you to build a relationship with them, which then turns into a conversation, which then turns into a closed one deal, which then turns into a customer evangelist. And you can't get any better than that. And by the way, if you want to schedule some time with me and you're a company that has at least 15 sales reps or more, I'm happy to spend time with your CRO or you as the head of sales and take you through the account-based podcasting strategy. We use it all the time, and we've built millions of dollars in pipeline. Thus, the Modern Selling Podcast. If you're not listening to the Modern Selling Podcast, I'm the host of the Modern Selling Podcast. We're almost, I think, 4 years going. This February will be 4 years running on the podcast. So take a listen, and if you like it, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on iTunes.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to pick up a couple of questions that have come in, Mario, and let's just answer those as well, looking at the time we have. This question is, do you risk damaging your company's brand by persistently messaging through different avenues with no response from the prospect?
That's a really good question. Insightful, actually. A really good question. The answer is no. No, not at all, because you're not going to ruin your brand any less than just keep making the phone call, 25 phone calls, right? It won't be any worse than that. So let's talk about what won't be any worse than that, right? Now, think about it from this perspective. When the world went digital, especially when the world went digital, and it's not going back, it's a hybrid environment, okay? We as a seller, we as a sales leader, our jobs became insanely more complicated. What do I mean by that? All right, let me show you this graphic here. And this will be my only graphic that I'll share for this session here. So here is what we call the old way of selling. Can you see this on my screen, Priya, the image?
Yes.
We used to cold call. We used to email blast. We asked for referrals by attending events. By asking for referrals and attended events. That's what we used to do. Now, customers don't want to be sold to. They want insights. They want education. They want helpful engagement. So when you're reaching out, you're not reaching out to say, can we talk? Can we talk? Can we talk? Can we have a meeting? Can we have a meeting? Can I have a meeting? That's, what do you call it? Persistent, but what was the word, Priya?
Being a pest versus being persistent.
That's right. That's called being a pest. Don't be a pest. Be persistent, but bring value. Educate your buyer with insights, content. That means you need to be reading your company blogs. You need to be watching your webinars. You need to understand the white papers and ebooks. You need to be a content czar, and you need to understand this because when you do, you now move into what's called the Omni Channel approach to prospecting. So this is the Omni Channel. Right in the center is still networking events, email blast, ask for referral, cold call. Still the core of what we've done. But now you're doing social selling, social engagement, messaging, connections. You're doing liking, commenting, sharing their particular posts. Text messaging with a PVC sales method, personalization, value, and a call to action. And less than in a few words, you can use direct mail. That's more of a company sponsored environment. Video messaging. Oh my gosh, less than 1 minute. And did you know that you have 7 to 15 seconds to capture your buyer's attention on that video? And oh, by the way, 59%, little secret, of executives say they'd rather watch a short video than read text. And last stat, 80% of the world's internet traffic, 80% here in 2021 is as a result of consuming, guess what? Video. 80%. So our buyers are normally used to this. And then, of course, you've got the digital referral in terms of being able to get into someone's office by asking someone to introduce you. So this is what we call the omni-channel way. And our job as prospectors got that much more complicated. One of our buyers, I can tell you right now, one of our chief customers, or big customers, the VP of sales, will never, ever respond to me under any medium except text messaging between 5 and 8 p.m. at night. I have another one that will not engage, and we talk on text somewhere around between the 10 and 11 hour. Yeah, 10 and 11. Crazy, right? But that's because he works, he's with his family, puts the newborns to bed, and then at 10 o'clock, he's back at it, and that's when he'll respond through text messaging. Yet another customer who refuses to talk in any other channel besides pick up the dang phone and call me. And yet another one that won't respond to anything except on email and will do a 1 or 2 word response. But if you get him on social, we got a nice personality. We got a lot of talking that's taking place. So our job as sellers have gotten more complicated, that we have to learn to be where the buyer wants us to be. We have to learn to engage where the buyer wants us to engage at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll keep going, by the way, if there's more questions, Priya.
Yeah. So there's just one more I can see here that's interesting. It says, what's the best topic for starting a sales conversation?
Well, I think it would be dependent upon your buyer persona. So I don't know how to answer that question, but I'll tell you what we do. So here at Vengreso, when we teach the PVC sales method, we teach there's 2 ways to personalize to a buyer. The first way is through hyper-personalization. And so we're going to look for information, content, something that they may have done. There's that cough. I almost got through the whole webinar without coughing. Almost. So thanks. I told you all earlier I was going to cough, but then it finally came. So with that in mind, it depends on the buyer persona. So when we reach out to the buyer, we're looking at their entire LinkedIn profile. We're combing through the company information to look at hyper-personalization with that particular individual. Here's a simple tip that we teach inside of our training program. This is not one that you can use for everyone, but if you notice that someone speaks an alternative language inside their profile, and one that is like almost sheer, like 8 out of 10 times you're going to get a response to, is go to Google Translator, type a 3-word or less subject line, personalize it with their name. So as an example, schedule meetings. We help sales organizations schedule more meetings, right? Book more meetings, and we help them increase their sales pipeline with prospecting skills development. All right. So if I were to use a subject line like schedule meetings, Mario, schedule meetings, Priya, whoever, fill in the name, you fill it in. I'm going to go to Google Translator and I'm going to put it in and ask for that to be translated into Spanish, German, French, whatever it might be. And I take that subject line and I use that now in my outreach to that particular buyer. And then the very first opening line is, as an example, if you were prospecting to me and you saw that I spoke Spanish, you'd say, Mario, I tried my best to translate it into Spanish. I hope I did well, right? And that opens the person up like, hey, they saw that I spoke another language. They are personal. I feel like I am absolutely being hyper personalized to. Yeah. So, and then now it opens up with, what do you want? And so now the what do you want is speaking to the business pain that you solve. For example, if I were to line up all 100 of you on this webinar and said, what business problem do you solve? One sentence. Okay, 2 sentences. I'll give you 2. Say it. Can you answer that question? For example, at Vengreso, the business problem that we help solve for sales teams is we help you, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Leader, help your sellers create more sales conversations and increase sales pipeline. Okay, got it. And it's clean. It's you know what we do. And if you don't have those 2 problems, I don't want to talk to you. You don't want to talk to me because you don't want to waste time either. So, any case, does that answer the question, Priya?
Yeah, I think absolutely does. It's always about getting into the buyer's mind and trying to understand what would appeal to them, right? And that's where hyper personalization really comes from. A lot of times we start looking for formulas and techniques which don't exist in sales, right?
Exactly. And here's the thing. You got to be committed to the process. Sales is science, ladies and gentlemen. Sales is science. Now, I could probably argue it's 51% science, 49% art. I could probably also argue that it's 51% art, 49% science. Doesn't matter. It is a huge component. And the science says you must run a cadence. The science says you must stick to the process. And the science says you must use multiple channels, minimum 3, preferably 5, right? And I gave you those 5 channels. Science says you must hyper-personalize because in this digital world that we've gotten into, nobody wants to waste their time. And guess what? Final tip of the day. Guess how many seconds a human will allocate to a digital task. Throw it in the chat. Let me see what you guys can guess. How many seconds will a human, the average attention span to a digital task, will a human allocate? A person. Ruben says 3, 5, 3, 15, 7, 15 seconds, 5. Okay. So there was a trick question. Chin says 60. It was a trick question. There's 2 answers. 2 answers on the board. Number 1, if you're sending a video, it's 7 to 15 seconds to capture that person's attention. Second answer, if you're sending a text-based engagement, like an email as an example, or a LinkedIn InMail as an example, or a LinkedIn message, or any of those, a text message, the average attention span, they'll give you 40 seconds. That's approximately 1 scroll on a mobile device. So if you create a message and your message is longer than 1 scroll, guess what? You did it wrong. 111 words or less. That is what you want to be thinking about. Yeah. All right. That's a ton of stuff that we've given. We went way over time with a lot of great questions, Priya. But listen, seriously, sales leaders, 15 sellers or more. If you're a seller listening in, you're like, this was great. Reach out to me, mario@vengreso.com. Happy to book a meeting with your CRO or CSO or your head of sales. If you've got 15 sellers or more, and if you've got less than 15 sellers, hey, there's something called the Modern Sales Mastery Program. And we'll send you that link right now, actually in the chat. The Modern Sales Mastery Programs for teams that are less than 15. All of these insights that you got right here will allow you, right there in the chat, there you go, will allow you to be able to, for $397 of all the on-demand content per year. And yes, there is an auto renewal inside that. you'll be able to get all of that great on-demand content. So have at it, click on it, and I would encourage you to take your Modern Sales Mastery program today and email me, mario@vengreso.com, if you've got 15 sellers or more, and I'll give you some free consulting to help you with your sales cadence.
Yeah, well, that's up for grabs then, Mario. Getting time with you is tough for me. Am I allowed to book a time as well?
At the end of the day.
All right. Thank you so much. I think that was a lot of content, and for everybody listening in, and thank you for staying on throughout the webinar. I still see people on there, though we've overshot time by almost 15 minutes.
We kept the full crowd, Priya. 15, almost 15 minutes longer than the allotted time. Everybody stayed. There wasn't anybody dropped off.
Absolutely. And so grab the links if you haven't already done that, or drop us an email and we're happy to share the links with you again. And look forward to staying connected. Connect with us on LinkedIn, follow us, get to YouTube or Facebook or whatever platform you like to use for engagement, to engage with us, because we'd love to stay connected with you. Thank you so much for your time. Any last words, Mario, for the people who are still there listening to us?
What I would just say is that we're going to make sure we send you in the recap all the assets that we provided to you today. And you'll have a chance to look at that. It's great to meet you and excited to help you guys prospect better and sell more. Thanks for being a part of our Vengreso community.